I've covered Black Lagoon before, talking on Rock twice and Revy once, and there were others I wanted to address, but those two steal the show so proficiently I didn't figure there would be enough content for the others. I actually plan to tackle this topic in a new format of quick discussions, but digging into some of Balalaika's scenes, I found a character who was much more rich than a simple warmonger. I was always a fan. If you've seen some of my previous videos, you can probably guess why, but I didn't realize how well she represented the world of Black Lagoon and our own world alike. Her story is one interconnected with real history, which on the surface may seem simple, but underneath reveals her extensive motivations, ideals, and goals. This is the real story of Balalaika. To address Balalaika, we have to take a trip back to 1979, the start of the Soviet-Afghan War. We don't have an exact age for Balalaika, but we can estimate in 1979 she's about 19 to 24 based on the hazy setting of Black Lagoon, the perfect age to be thrust into war. In episode 21, we see this, a younger version of herself, led to the sands of Afghanistan by two promises: a shot at the Olympic Games, and to restore the honor of her father at the same time. Naturally, there's a catch. A shocking disconnect from her jaded future, this more trusting version of Balalaika accepts the offer, eager for both outcomes and unaware of the true situation. The Soviet-Afghan War is often compared to what the Vietnam War was for America. Young soldiers shipped off away from their families, oftentimes by no choice of their own, only to return years later mentally destroyed, or not at all. These conflicts designed to spread ideals were supposed to be short and sweet, backing the local factions they agreed with and then leaving hastily with their selected form of government prevailing. This was never the case, though. The Soviet-Afghan War was hell. We don't need to get into a full history lesson here, but one detail shows that hell better than most. The zinc coffins dead soldiers were carried home in, fully sealed. They figured it was better that the families were left to wonder than to see what had become of their children. Destruction was certain, what changed was simply if it was mental or physical. But the population at home was none the wiser. The Soviet media was controlled directly by the Kremlin, meaning the news was no more than what the old, unrepresentative leaders of a dying empire decided that the people should see. As far as most were concerned, these wartime dealings were unknown or uneventful or something they shouldn't even care about because it had no effect on their daily lives. They had enough to worry about at home as the shelves of local stores emptied out and then never refilled. The New York Times reported in 1982, "For some of those too young to remember the desperate shortages of World War II, the offerings are as scant as they have been in memory." At noontime one day last week, the meat counter was down to pitiful cuts of beef and mutton, mostly fat and bone. The vegetable counter boasted symmetrically arranged displays of carrots, beetroot, and cabbage, but much of it was rotten. The people at home were suffering as well, yet resources were being poured into war. The atmosphere was best summed up by this quote, said on the death of former Soviet leader Brezhnev: "I remember these old fossils carrying the casket." When Brezhnev died in the midst of the war, he was replaced by Andropov, another old, dying man cut from the same cloth. Another man who would do little to nothing to truly ease the suffering of his people. All around, it became clear that the Soviet Union was dying, its last breaths fought in a country known as the graveyard of empires.
It was a big mistake. And now all our sacrifice and our people lost was in vain.
This is what Balalaika experienced, and it explains a lot about her character. When she returned home from war, she found nothing that was promised to her. Instead, she and her comrades were pushed into the fringes of society, left to die in poverty. Men stricken by PTSD, unable to work properly, were viewed as having no value to their society. On the one hand, the Soviet Union in the 1980s still offered no place to the individual. On the other hand, by assigning to the associations of veterans benefits concerning exclusively the labor sphere, the Soviet state placed itself directly in the lineage of the late 1940s when rehabilitation measures for disabled of all categories were focused on production, on the fantasy of moral rehabilitation and care through labor. This functional and pragmatic approach to physical and psychiatric disability thereby highlights an economic goal taking precedence over individual interest. These men weren't coming back home as former soldiers, they were coming back home as a perceived waste of space.
Others said that I'd wounded myself to come back alive. It's very painful to listen to all of that.
There wasn't a warm welcome or rehabilitation for these men whose sanity was left to the sands. All they were seen as were speed bumps to productivity, the Union desperately trying to keep itself alive via production. And there's more to their treatment. They carried home with them the stench of failure as far as Moscow was concerned. Over 10 years, the Red Army failed to conquer a nation worse equipped with less soldiers and nowhere to run. Nowhere is this more clear than Panjshir, a river valley region of Afghanistan. Although the fronts of the war changed as invading forces pushed south through Afghanistan, this 60-mile patch of land was never penetrated more than halfway. Ahmed Shah Musaad led the rebel forces there, known as the Mujahideen, and equipped with not much more than what they salvaged from fallen Soviets, he consistently drove back those larger forces. Mujahideen casualties appear to have been light, in sharp contrast to casualties suffered by attacking forces. In a recent interview, Commander Musaad said his men suffered 50 killed in the 7th offensive and 13 in the 8th. Altogether this year, about 150 Mujahideen in the valley had been killed, he said. Musaad estimates communist casualties in the valley and surrounding areas at more than 2,500 killed and wounded in the 7th offensive and more than 3,000 in the September operations. Most of these were Soviets, he said. The Red Army, the greatest fighting force in the world, was disgraced by their inability to take a simple valley. Obviously, it wasn't that easy, but what arose from these trials was world clarity. A world which lived in fear of the Soviet army now saw its cracks, their deficiencies, and weakness. It was present for the world to see, clear and plain as the Red Army pulled back. This was one of the areas Balalaika fought in.
No one thought the assassins were children.
Remember Panjshir, though.
She was at the very epicenter of the Soviet disgrace. It's safe to say she was treated with no consideration returning home, and to boot, returning to a dead empire, collapsing under its own weight and missteps. What she drew from all of this, the war, her treatment, the fall of her motherland, was simple. Nothing had any purpose. The blood spilled all over the sands of Afghanistan led to nothing to speak of. The men who were able to return found themselves nowhere, the husk of their former home. The ideals touted for so many years trampled into the ground by those who abused them. The war, and by proxy her life, had no meaning. Because war became Balalaika's life in Afghanistan, because war could take her life. Fighting for her dreams, she had one option: throw herself at this fully, lest she find herself dead. She became the most adept soldier, and now all of it was useless. She could never follow those dreams, and the life and skills she had developed in that search had no purpose now. And we see this hopelessness on her face as she watches the games she could never be a part of, branded forever as the deserter of a dead nation. No home, no money, nothing. So it makes sense that she would become one of the living dead, clinging to a static existence, just like Revi. She dons her uniform once more and marches up to rally her troops to a new conquest. Because why not return to the past? Why not cling to what they had before when they have nothing now? Is there a point to letting the past go when you have no future? The only thing that breaks her slump is the ability to once again command her soldiers, to do the things she crafted her life around. This is the most lively we ever see her, and all it is her entrance to the city of the dead. She comes full circle by the end of Blood Trail, saying to the Americans,
"I despise being one of the walking dead, and I am filled with envy for those who are still in the land of the living."
She knows what donning that uniform once more meant. She knows what the jacket draped over her shoulders is representative of. To maintain a static image of the past, never moving into the future. Her men wear the same uniforms, the uniforms of a dead empire. She hates where she is, waiting for a great war and pushing towards it at every chance to try and break from her own personal hell. But playing soldier in the mafia is better than nothing at all. There's something else she brought back from the sands of Afghanistan, the perception that the world was devoid of justice. And why would she believe in it? Not only did she witness and partake in the atrocities of war, she saw how the ruling class bastardized and ruined her homeland. The people, her included, soldiers and citizens alike, suffered for their decisions, for their war. The strong stayed strong and the weak stayed weak, and that was that. So when she throws her power around and demands respect from everyone around her, it makes perfect sense. She's emulating the very thing that proved to her a lack of justice. Those powerful men, like her grandfather, created a world where no matter their right and wrongdoings, they could never face justice. Contrasted against the ideals of a communist country where one person shouldn't have what no one else can, that power and privilege was supposed to be the stuff of Western capitalists, but it was ingrained in their very society. As far as people like Balalaika would be concerned, there was no justice anywhere. Neither in the West she hated, or in the East she fought for. Why should she ever pursue justice? Like she says to Rock later,
"Without ever exercising your own strength, you seek the death of others at the hands of someone else. The justice you refer to smells pretty rotten to me."
justice is subjective, and that nature allows it to be used for any cause, whatever the perceived morality. Oftentimes, this cause turns out to be war. The justice of spreading your ideals to another country, the supposed perpetuation of all things right and true, the leaders who sent others out to kill and be killed, the same way Rock asks for the destruction of another clan. She hates him so much in this moment because he represents the people who destroyed her life and everything she came to loathe. A man who believed in some sort of justice that she feels is nothing more than an empty word. She has no respect for a man like him who hasn't fought for himself but talks like he has a metaphorical high ground. But there's lots of people she doesn't respect in the series, ranging from fellow members of Hotel Moscow to Rowanapur's police.
The bounty's open to civil servants too, right?
That man disgusts me, honestly. I'm sorry. It's hard for me to remember the bosses who rose up using money instead of skill.
This is similar to how she feels on Rock. People who wielded power without ever paying its cost, who force others to witness the realities they could never endure. She only respects people who have been through hell just like her. This is the mixing of camaraderie and respect, as the people she fights hardest for are the same she always has, those who served her in combat. She's surrounded by the select few people who have the exact experience she respects. As a related note, she expresses some sort of respect for two other people, Shane Claxton and Dutch, two men who served in Vietnam. Although she's aggressive towards the American commander, she accepts his compliment nonetheless, stating,
Those are kind words, and it's a considerable honor to receive your compliment.
And there is the fact that Dutch saved Balalaika, adding to her fondness for him and his services, but she continues to use him after repaying that favor, and after he disobeys her orders with respect to the Romanian twins, a quite obvious slap in the face. She rarely extends this sort of leniency to anyone, let alone those helping the murderer of her comrade. The hell of war is what Balalaika seeks in others, and the only thing she respects. But this also creates a sort of echo chamber around her. The only ones she keeps close enough to listen to her are men who were just as lost as she was in 1992. They had limited options, and a return to former glory and leader was the best thing for them. No one else was even trying to provide anything for them. She gave them life, and so they would die for her. Everyone else? Well, they simply don't understand what she's seen, lived, and felt. They don't know hell on earth, and so they can't judge her. They're just unworthy. This mindset, however much she backs it up, is indicative of Rowanapur, the city of the living dead. Stationary-minded people who seek to persist, and nothing else. Although she may hate it, deep down she uses that mentality to her advantage. It's necessary for her. But this is something I explore a lot more in the Revy-focused video mentioned earlier, so check that one out if you want a little bit more on that particular subject. To jump back to the Romanian twins, they provided a lot of the insight and inference I've used so far. She reacts with rage to their killing of her comrade, one of the few she chooses to respect. We can see an extension of this in the help she refuses from the fellow gangs of Rowanapur, people she sees only as those playing a childlike version of war. But more than anything else, her slow killing of one of the twins presents her out in the open, literally as she sits in waiting and figuratively as she opens up true. It's telling that after this moment, the only thing she feels is being tired.
I'm getting too old for this. I feel exhausted.
It's only natural that she would be tired after operations like this, waiting all night by that fountain. But I think this says more about her past experiences as well. Two of the quotes that stood out to me from a documentary of the Soviet-Afghan War were these. One Soviet soldier who just lost his friend said, "The first thing you feel when your friend is dead is a desire for revenge." And a former Soviet commander said upon returning from the war, "I had the impression my life was over. I was completely burnt out." This is representative of Balalaika's emotional state right here. Not only is it tiring pouring her existence into retribution, but this is also nothing new, down to the very fact of killing a child.
Half the enemies we fought were children.
Nothing that happened here was fresh to her jaded mind, not even the days' worth of snuff films and child pornography she dug through for clues. Not a single eyelash is batted at anything that occurs in these 3 episodes, despite being some of the most fucked of the entire series. On my first pass, I was uncomfortable the entire time. She, while living in these moments, couldn't care less. All she needs is revenge for the dead. The atrocities of war are a part of Balalaika, and she's more immune to them than most. It's obvious why Claxton says to her,
"Perhaps it's none of my business, but were you discharged for an illness?"
The options are to be debilitated by the pain, live every day in mental agony of what you've done and what was done to you, or dive into it full force. Accept the darkness and make it yours so it can never overtake you. Balalaika is insane because insanity was the only option to stay alive. Dancing in the pits of hell is her only desire because slowing down means acknowledging the past, and the living dead of Rowanapur simply don't do that. Contrasted against the twins, there is one young person she takes a bit more delight in tearing down, however, Yukio. The episode where they first focus on each other is titled Two Father's Little Soldier Girls, and for a very good reason. It's not in the spotlight much, but Yukio is like a fledgling version of Balalaika, a young girl drafted into a war she didn't ask for because of the sins of her father and under the banner of a dying ideal or nation. The Russian captain is ruthless when dealing with Yukio and the Washimine clan, willing to wipe out both of them and the other Yakuza around them. Bombings, mass shootings, nothing is too far in this arc. She throws her weight around so hard, every single gang member is outright shocked by her. Even her own aren't safe. And why would this be? Well, she's not going to go easy on someone like who she used to be, because with her mindset, that's just someone who hasn't been proven. This is a world she thinks has no justice, a world that robbed her of her youth. Why would she feel any differently? Why would she extend a courtesy to this girl that she herself never received? Her role is to crush the weak like she'd witnessed powerful men do time and time again. If anything, this is progress in her mind, cleansing the world of those who aren't fit to survive the worst. And at the same time, it's also proving that she exists with a vigor. She takes delight in her killings, those final moments where she can gloat knowing a fate is sealed under her grasp. To take another life is to prove that yours has some kind of value, even if that value is only to harm others. It's an impact nonetheless. Yukio is all of this for Balalaika, the catharsis of destroying her former self. And taking down the forced Yakuza leader serves as a lesson for Rock as well, the one who represents her hate the best. She nearly admits this in the garage scene, coming closer than any other time to killing someone useful to her. But rather than kill him, she does something else. something you might call worse. She begins the process of destroying him from the inside. She throws him down, makes him entertain her to save his life, laughs in his face, and then has him get right back to work for her. She says directly,
I'm amused. That's all this is.
this isn't about anything he thinks, this is just about her wants. And what she wants is to prove to him the danger of believing in justice, the very lack of it, and how powerless people like him are. Sending him Yukio's crossed out photo is a clear message. You failed. And it was always going to be like that. Their last day in Japan, she seems to listen to Rock for a moment. He asks her for something specific.
I'd like you to destroy the Washimine clan. To the point where their survival is impossible.
It looks like she budges, content to oblige him if it means more dancing in the pits of hell. But she knows, and admits to knowing, the clan has gone underground before this. Before leaving, she turns and tells him this fact, and in the same breath, invalidates the killings he just took a credit for. That blood became meaningless. So he has to consider the fact that he was wrong, and that the blood he spilled was for no cause. That all of his effort was for naught. That the life he was crafting was now meaningless. Just like everything she had experienced before coming home from the war. She forces him to translate very disrespectful and harsh words for the first time outside of Revi, making him break the politeness so prevalent in the culture he left behind, like she's killing what's left of nation in him, just like what happened to her. He's left broken after this, after the graphic death of the one he tried to save. At the opening of Blood Trail, he feels useless and wanders through his tasks empty and devoid of emotion, just like she did in 1992. This moment was a lesson against justice, a lesson on the truth of the underworld. And as she said,
I'm starting to think there may still be hope for you.
a lesson on crafting Rock into something more useful in her world, crafting him into another one of the living dead. But if you want more on Rock, I'll link to that video now because I go into much more detail there. If she wants to respect someone, they have to be shown the fires of hell. So that's what she does. Not just with Rock, but with everyone. Like playing Mr. Chin's death over the phone for Dutch. Crushing every gang she comes across. The show of force for the American soldiers. Her pain is to become the world's pain. One man shouldn't have what another doesn't, and every man should have what the other does, pain included. A brutal communism which does nothing but breed hate and war. Balalaika is the culmination of many factors, a mix of fact and fiction for the ages. She incorporates some real, dark, and much less often shared aspects of Soviet history with the more prevalent themes of Black Lagoon, the static nature of the people of Rowanapur, gray morality, and the downfall of the human spirit. One woman sitting in the open, but always covered up. Scarred from her past, much more so than just on the surface, and representative of everything that gave her a life and took one away in the same breath. That is the true story of Balalaika. This was an interesting one to write. It took a few forms, morphing from a short video, a new style I had planned, into a historical video, and then turning into a full-on discussion anyway, because I have no self-control. But I guess it also proves how great Black Lagoon can be, and how much it trusts the viewer to think on things on their own, rather than beating us over the head with fake symbolism. And I respect that. It makes me think that one day I may do other profiles for Black Lagoon characters, the ones who I thought there wasn't enough detail for, yes, Roberta included. But let me know what you thought about the historical mix in today's video, and if it's something you'd want to see as an element where relevant moving forward. Here I think it was more of an outright necessity because a lot of her character is ingrained in that actual history. But it may be a nice option for some other videos later down the line. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble, so I'll do my usual terrible outro. I didn't say intro. This is so bad. It's so bad. I hope it's just like enjoyably bad, not just bad. But yes, I'll have a link to my Discord in the description down below if you want to chat with some other fans or me or a few other things we have going on down there. I'll put a link to my Twitter in the description as well, and try to start using that if you want to follow me there. And maybe as I'm watching stuff, I'll throw out some live tweets, even though it's me watching old anime about how I'm feeling about specific scenes and things. Who knows? We'll see what I'm gonna do over there. Also, leave a like on this video if you like the topic, if you want to see more Black Lagoon, or just to let me know that you like this video and the kind of style it was in, so I know what to make more of moving forward. Let me know down below what you want to see in the future, if it's more Black Lagoon, if it's, you know, anything else, more Psycho-Pass, whatever it is, how you thought about this video, let me know down below, because all of that stuff does very much help out these videos and the channel in general. Subscribe if you're new here. You've left by this point if you're new here. Let's be honest, I'm saying this for the people who enjoy my terrible outros. There's maybe like 5 of you out there. I don't know. Thank you for sticking around this long. More videos on screen, subscribe thing as well. Let you get back on with your day, and just say thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you again soon. I swear I'll do a good outro one day.